Coming to you from the Central City Radio Podcast Studios, it's Unfiltered Reality with your host, Alex Stovall.
Unfiltered perspective, people. That's why we call it the Unfiltered Reality.
It's about to get real.
Welcome to Unfiltered Reality. I am your host, Alex Stovall. I am with my beautiful fiance, Jade Olivier, soon to be Jade Stovall, and we are here with a very special guest. But before we get to that, just want to run through what Unfiltered Reality is about. We get real people, real life scenarios, real situations,
real perspective,
all in one, coming to the podcast to give us some insight and free nuggets. So
we love nuggies.
I'd like to introduce a really good friend of mine. Definitely could say he's become a mentor pouring into me. He wrestles bears, underwater basket weaving, pretty much everything I could possibly think of at this moment in time.
Okay,
but I'd like to introduce Dave, and he could tell you a little bit about himself and what he really does.
Tell us what you really do, Dave.
I am the Southwest Regional Director and Arizona Chair for the Republican Liberty Caucus. We are the longest-running grassroots group in America working within the Republican Party to hold the party accountable to its ideals.
Say that 3 times as fast as you can. That's a mouthful. Dave, what's your last name?
Kahn.
Kahn.
So you do DK? What do you prefer? Like I think Donkey Kong, but whatever. What do you prefer to be called?
Most people just say Dave.
All right, we're rocking with Dave.
Easy.
Cool.
Dave, you're also an economics teacher.
Yes.
Correct? So we're going to be talking a little bit.
Ooh, I just got intrigued. She said the E word. Not exit, economics.
We're going to be talking about both of these things today. So, heard a little bit about Dave. So, where would you like to start? What are we going to talk about first? I see you have this out here.
Well, I'm really intrigued, actually. They can't seize. When you say see, people are like
so,
seize candy?
One of the things the Republican Liberty Caucus does is we want the party to live up to its own ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, the most popular term nobody understands in Republican politics is the term rhino. Nobody knows what that means, do they?
No.
So, when we started our Arizona charter in 2018, the first thing we did was to say, if you're going to hold people accountable, you have to know who's doing what.
Yeah.
So we started tracking voting records, and every spring when the legislature goes out of session, we release everybody's voting record with a score, 0 to 100. Mm-hmm. So
real quick.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we found over the past 5 years, some people are extremely consistent, and some people go up and down. But we've seen that what we call our top defenders of liberty, the people who make our splash page with the highest scores.
Holy potatoes! Wait a second. So you're telling me that you guys have created the Frankenstein machine that holds Republicans and elected officials feet to the fire. That's almost like that term, accountability?
Exactly.
God bless America.
So wait, for somebody on the outside, if they don't know what a rhino is, can you give us an explanation, please, Dave?
The term stands for Republican in name only, but like I said, after that, everybody has their own definition. Mm-hmm. It's very amorphous. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure for most people it means the guy that annoyed me last week.
Literally what I was thinking.
or said mean things or wrote mean tweets or something, right?
But we look at what you did. And if you're consistently scoring in the 90s and 100s, you're a good Republican. Your voting record shows it. If you're consistently scoring in the 60s, you're not so good.
Wow. So it sounds to me like Republican Liberty Caucus has an emphasis on making sure individuals are not only hold true to word, but also deed. Right?
Right.
All right, cool.
Practice what you preach.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very transparent on our own end. So if you get a copy of the scorecard, which is available on our website.
What is that website?
rlc.org.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's easy. Y'all don't need to take notes for that. rlc.org.
We list the bills that we score everybody on, and it even includes a short 2 to 3 sentence primer on basically this was a tax increase bill, this was a spending bill, this was a criminal reform bill, and it was going to do this. So when we say a guy didn't vote well, you can see exactly what he voted on that we're applying to him.
So the term rhino is based on policy that they pass or are in support of, or?
Well, we don't like to use that term ourselves. We talk primarily about people's scores.
Right.
Good.
And it's like high school. If you have a 90 or above, you're a rock star that year. That's an A.
Who do you think's the most consistent on the conservative Republican side?
So we have a few people. One person that I'll mention who we've endorsed for his re-election is Arizona Senator Warren Peterson. He's had a score in the high 90s, if not a perfect score, every year we've done the scorecard.
Shout out to Mr. Warren Peterson for consistency.
Representative Shauna Bollock, who's running for Secretary of State, is another one that has been extremely consistent, always among our top defenders of liberty.
Interesting. You guys got to look these people up. I know Google is undefeated. I can't obviously tweet or Google for you, but yeah, apparently they're the most consistent people we have right now. I'm sure there's more, but check these people out.
And do your research. Don't just be like, this person's nice, I trust them, or like listen to the crowd, because that's what gets you in trouble. You need to...
Speaking of that brings me to my next question. You do something else in the teaching realm. In the realm of the Constitution and economics, do you teach social studies or something as well?
I'm a social studies teacher. Over the years, I've taught about 12 years. I think I've taught everything there is to teach from 6th grade to 12th grade in social studies. In recent times, I've been focused on economics and government.
Okay, so I've got two questions. I know people are probably curious just about what the organization is that you're a part of and what you guys do and what you've been up to specifically. So let's talk a little bit about you. Have you been watching the races lately, the Senate, governor, and House and state races?
As closely as I can. I think people don't realize how many races are going on in an election year.
You just got to look at the posters on the side of the road.
And certainly some are more critical than others. I have friends in races that are unopposed. There's nothing really there to watch. And then there's very close races like the Senate race and Secretary of State.
I saw something very interesting trending. Actually, I even watched it and listened to it with my own eyes and ears. What do they call him? Blazing Masters?
Blake Masters.
Blake Masters, that's his name. Apparently, he believes that crime originates from black people. The high crime rates apparently originate from black people. I don't know about you, but me being a person of color, I would challenge that statement. I think crime is nonpartisan to color. But apparently Mr. Blake Masters running for Senate seems to think that. Also, I sent the guy a text message maybe a few weeks back before he got Trump's endorsement.
Getting a little personal here.
Right. He left me like the color of my blood on red. He's supposed to be for the people. All I'm saying is keep the same energy.
Yes. Okay, keeping on the right track. What do you think, Dave?
There's a couple things there. First, one of the things I say most frequently is the biggest problem the Republican Party has, especially in Arizona, is messaging. We have a lot of people who say some incredibly stupid things. You have to know your audience, and you have to be aware of what you're saying and whether it actually makes your organization look good. But on the other side with the crime thing, so I just returned from Freedom Fest.
Ooh, how was that?
It was incredible. And the very last thing I did there was actually on the topic of race and crime and injustice.
Oh my gosh, what good timing.
And Zuby got pitched this question on, do black people commit greater crimes? And Zuby is black, but he's not American. So he's like, one thing I've noticed, he said, is that Americans really obsessed with analyzing something's caused by race. And he said, maybe what we need to do is re-examine the data. He goes, I'll bet you there's a much stronger correlation socioeconomic status than there is to race when it comes to the committing of crimes. And we know that, unfortunately, way too many black Americans are stuck in very impoverished neighborhoods. So I suspect Zuby's probably right that the issue isn't the color of the skin, it's the conditions we're making people live in.
Right.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, that's a great one, which leads me to my next question. In the social studies realm, what have you experienced, and what would you say is, obviously there's no cookie cutter, red pill analogy, if you will, about how to resolve the indoctrination taking place within the schools rather than education, but how would you say we could take a step in the right direction, or at least pivot from the direction we're going? Because I'm under the impression we're not really creating an environment for people to thrive and be free thinkers, but more so being indoctrinated, obey, consume mentality.
So this is a big issue to me, both as a political activist and as a teacher. And in a way, there's a cookie cutter, like a magic pill, and that's school choice. And here's why. The education system we use right now is what's called the Prussian model. It goes all the way back to people like Martin Luther. And what people don't realize is it was never designed to educate people. It was designed to indoctrinate people. Luther wanted to create a country of Christians so obedient that you could disband the police force and you wouldn't have a problem.
Oh.
This is what the system was designed to do. Now, we've been using it to teach because it is an information transfer system. That is part of what's there, but we have long since surpassed the point in which it's useful for the kind of education we need in this country. So it's not just a matter of indoctrination. It's also a matter of we want our kids to get a kind of education that will let them go on to become incredibly successful people. And both goals require getting rid of the model of education we have now.
I agree. I couldn't agree more, actually. I am definitely a school choice and promoting vouchers advocate. I think it's extremely important. Like we talked about on the previous episode, somebody actually funded me to go to a private school, and as I've mentioned time and time again, I learned more in that 1 year with those teachers for a various amount of reasons, but more specifically, their intentionality to detail and willingness to meet those students where they were at. Far more intimate on an intellectual level, on an educational level, and so much more passionate about investing in the students that they had in the class. I think everyone should be afforded the opportunity, and that's something we should be actively fighting for. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of education in schools, can you talk us through some of maybe the challenges that you've seen or other challenges you've seen in the education system?
So, to me, one of the biggest challenges is innovation. The public school system that we use is remarkably resistant to innovation. Andrew Coulson, the late Andrew Coulson, who worked for Cato, said the last notable change in education was the chalkboard. Think about that. That we haven't had a meaningful change to the way we teach since the chalkboard. But on top of that, a lot of the stuff that people my age and older remember about school has faded over the last 2 decades. I'm talking about basic things like school discipline systems. Things like detention and suspension do not exist in most schools anymore.
Really?
Their teachers are expected with zero administrative support to create a discipline system out of whole cloth.
Wow. I can imagine what it's like, because I remember going to ISS and suspension, and it was not fun.
I mean, I've been graduated for 12 years now.
What
And
was the
even
thing
in
that
school
they
in
had?
Australia, like the discipline then was kind of starting to... I don't know what it was like before me, but if they don't have anything to discipline now, I can't even imagine.
I've actually taught under principals who told us that no matter what we do, we are not to send a kid to the office.
What?
That was their idea of discipline.
No.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Because if we send a kid to the office and they have to do
They
something
have to deal
about
with it. That was
Yikes.
honestly like the scariest thing, was like being sent to the office, and they took that away.
Yeah. I mean, when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, calling parents is always something that seems to work.
Yeah.
98% of the time. You have those wild cards where
basically all that's left.
Yeah.
And that depends wildly on the parent. You know, some parents, they talk to their kids and that's it. You're done with problems. Some parents can yell at their kids. I had a parent have to come up to school in one school year 23 times for a parent meeting.
Oh my days.
gosh.
Zero control over her child.
And what was her reasoning? Lack of accountability, just didn't care, didn't have time, was working too much.
It might.
I mean, it may have been a while ago, but I would just be curious to know why.
Oh, it was pretty distinct. Mom, we're sitting there in the meeting, and Mom threatened that if she had to get told she was coming back up again, she was sending the kid to boarding school, like military school. Kid right there in the meeting looked over at Mom and said, "Oh, please.
Oh, no.
You don't have the balls."
Wow.
My gosh, my mom threatened me I'd cry.
Could you imagine talking back? That's a parent with zero control over her child.
Oh, so that would be the main issue then. Imagine it now.
Parent contact's important. It's absolutely the most significant factor in education, and you want to communicate with your parents. But if you're 100% relying on it for classroom discipline, you're going to have a big problem.
And I think it goes into a lot of the, like, I don't know if I told you, but my PhD is in psychology. Understanding that not everything is personal.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't be so sensitive to someone saying, hey, your child is a train wreck. And it's distracting me, it's distracting the class, it's affecting how students are learning.
Yeah.
You got to be able to take some accountability, like we just talked about, and some ownership to know that, hey, it starts at home, and your child is a representation of you.
Sure. And then there are things that go on in our schools, like, for example, medical science has shown for quite a while now that having high school age kids get up at 7, 8 in the morning to start class is not just bad for learning, but bad for their growth.
Really?
Let's dive into that. I'm
biologically, it's been a while since I've seen the article, but I think it's supposed to be closer to like 10 o'clock. Like high school age kids, teenagers, their brains don't switch on that early very well. And when you force them to, it's not healthy.
Well, that makes sense, because if you let a teenager sleep in, they're probably sleeping in until like 12 or 1 o'clock.
So we have kids up at the worst time possible for them. And then we expect them to sit in a desk for 8 hours. I mean, we are stacking on. There are kids that can handle that, but everybody is different.
Statistically speaking, yeah.
And
most kids are not wired for that.
Yeah, trying to force them into like an adult structure when they're not adults yet. They're
We are
still
not
trying to
promoting
learn.
wake your kid up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
no.
people. Just
Let
throwing
them-
it out there.
Get them to go to school at the right time.
But it's
Just
also a matter for being geared up for that higher level thinking and learning.
yeah.
It's not that they have to sleep in till 9, 10, 2 in the afternoon, but it's saying if you want your kid doing advanced critical thinking exercises and algebra, 7 a.m. is probably not the best time.
I can agree with that, because I don't remember anything I learned in public school. I'll just be completely honest.
I kind of feel the same, to be fair. Like, I don't...
Homecoming. Remember homecoming? Woo!
Stop it. I wasn't there. You better forget it. But yeah.
These are all great things, but I kind of wanted to touch on something more personal, if you don't mind. When it comes to social economics and social studies and being face-to-face with these kids and working with the organization Republican Liberty Caucus, what has been your personal perspective and your personal take? I know people like to hear the statistics and the fundamentals and analytics, but at some point, I'm a firm believer in hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. This is Unfiltered Reality. We really like to hear where people's heart is at and where they think we're missing it and where they think we're doing well at, and then kind of pick up and keep trucking from there, if that makes sense.
And that's a personal take on like everything. So when it comes to RLC and education separately, like whatever you want to, whatever your personal opinion is that you'd like to share.
We're all about free nuggets.
Give me them nuggies.
So let me start in the classroom first. My philosophy with my students, I teach economics and government, is that we're going to do every controversy we can find. That I think too many teachers shy away from having very real conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm straightforward to my kids. We're going to talk about this stuff not because you're going to enjoy it, because when our country screws this stuff up, people get killed.
Yeah.
People are getting hurt.
And they need
That's
to know.
what happens with bad public policy.
Yeah.
You know, it gets people killed. And these kids are going to be voters one day. And I would like them to support policies that are going to make people's lives better.
Yes.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the RLC.
That part.
I had a professor who started out class, and he said, everybody loves to complain about politicians and issues. He goes, how many people do you know that have sat down and said, what is good government? What should government actually be doing, and how do you know? And that's what we're doing at the RLC, is we're trying to get the Republican Party to think about, what are we doing? Because we're not doing it well enough, and when people in politics don't do things well enough, people get hurt.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody even asked me when I was in my race, what does good government look like?
What does it
That's
look like to
That's a phenomenal
you?
question.
What would you assume? And then we can ask Dave.
I personally believe that good government are appointed officials that are drafting legislation and policies that are going to benefit the people for the better. But that would be my short version of it.
Right,
Yeah.
but my professor was getting to the point of, how do you know the policy is a good policy? How do you know it's going to benefit somebody?
Yeah, please answer that.
So, I am a classical liberal. That means I'm a liberal in the tradition of John Locke, Thomas
okay.
Jefferson,
Right.
the people who came up with the term. And the idea is that the key ingredient that makes a policy good is freedom. And we can see this today. You can run the data and compare states that are less free to states that are more free. And the people in the states that are more free are overall also doing better economically. And we also see that with cost of living. States that are more free tend to have a lower cost of living. And that's one of the biggest issues to me. People are talking about inflation now, but even on top of inflation, the cost of living in this country is artificially too high, and it's politicians, especially politicians on the left, that have caused that problem. The government takes, 25-30% of your income in taxes.
That we know of.
It's taking at least half that much in regulations, and I think that number's low. I'm trying to get some of my economist friends to actually point me to a good study.
Yeah.
But that's about 40% of your income out the gate that the government's just taking.
We're almost like Norway. I believe Norway takes about 60% of their
It's 60% taxes plus their regulatory burden.
Do you know what I
Right.
like about this as well? Is that, Dave, you do your research. Like, you're not being biased. Yes, you're a liberal. Yes, you stand saying you're a Republican, but you actually do your research. So you're not being biased. You're not just being like, Republicans are better. Like, you're genuinely looking into everything, which I really appreciate.
And I think definitions and terminology has been lost in political rhetoric that would make a person swing to one side of the pendulum or another.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody recently, and they called themselves a constitutional conservative, America First, pro-Trump candidate.
What
Sorry.
is that? Were they ultra MAGA too?
Yes, they were.
You have to be ultra MAGA or you're a rhino.
That's the problem. What is all that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure most of those terms are there to confuse people, and the other half are just there because people will clap their hands and cheer. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody knows what that means in terms of, when I get in office, it means I will do this.
Yeah. I was saying, Alex, I think they're just there so that you can raise the bar and raise the bar and raise the bar. So if somebody says,
buzzwords.
if someone says, oh, I'm America First, but then they do something you don't like, you go, no, you have to be this, or you're a rhino, or you're not good enough.
And, come election time, every Republican is a good, solid conservative. In my district, Rusty Bowers is running for the state Senate, and he's found 3 or 4 bills that prove he's a solid conservative.
Mm-hmm.
This is a man who went from a 94% scorecard result in 2018 to 52% this year.
Oh, no.
I like to see what his net worth is, though.
he's not a solid conservative. That's what he is. When your score goes down every year, you're not doing it right.
You're not consistent. Consistency is
We
key.
like consistency,
We do.
people.
No, he is consistent. He's
Consistently bad. Yeah,
worse.
He's on a
Consistent downtrend.
slide. He's having fun.
But whatever he is, he's not a consistent conservative.
Right.
Consistent conservatives don't have scores that go down every year.
Yeah.
And a fun fact, ladies and gentlemen that are listening, you cannot call somebody a rhino that has not been elected without a track record of legislation and policy that would be contrary to being a conservative or a liberal or a Democrat or whatever party you want to affiliate with. That's free chicken, by the way.
I'd prefer to get rid of the term altogether because I think it C-stabbed meaning a long time ago.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's just used as an insult now.
Well, Dave, it's been a pleasure talking.
Yeah, can we...
I learned a lot. I mean, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking time out
is.
to speak to the audience and just give them an authentic, unfiltered perspective.
For sure. And Dave, can we find you anywhere on social media? Is there anything you'd like to plug?
We have our website, rlc.org. We are on Facebook and Twitter. I never touch Twitter myself. I don't even know the handle.
Neither do I. It's all him.
I picked up tweeting.
The Facebook page is really the best place to find our state charter for now.
And they just look up RLC? Or RLC?
Republican Liberty Caucus of Arizona.
Okay, amazing.
Republican Liberty Caucus. Caucus.
of
Wow. I don't know
Caucasus?
what you said. Republican Liberty Caucus of Arizona, ladies and
Amazing.
gentlemen. Wow,
And
that's a tongue twister.
It
there. Practicing that after we close.
And then I'm going to just quickly plug our social media. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find it at Unfiltered Reality Podcast on Instagram and YouTube, or you can email us at unfilteredrealitypod@gmail.com and let us know if there's anybody else you'd like to speak to, if you'd like to hear from Dave again, and what you would really like us to talk about. And
or even ask, maybe send a request if you'd like to come onto the podcast. Like I said, we're
for
all about
sure.
real people, local business owners, people in the community with real perspective.
people doing great things like Dave here. Thank you so much again for being a part of it.
God bless you
having me.
guys. God bless Dave, and God bless America.